This is the Purple Huddle podcast. As usual, I am your host, Josh Fry, the managing editor over at purpleptsd.com. You can find all my written work there. And I'm joined today by the senior editor of both Vikings Territory and Purple PTSD, Kyle Jowdry. How you doing today?
I got to say, I know we've talked about this, but I didn't know if you'd get my last name right in terms of the pronunciation. So I'm impressed, Josh. So that gave me like a little bit of a boost that you actually pronounced it correctly.
I do my best over here. I'm trying to host as best as I can.
I know, because I mean, everyone I assume gets your name wrong, and for a long time I was getting your last name wrong. So, as a fellow last name mispronunciation guy, I'm impressed, and I appreciate the effort.
It's been about a 50-50 split or actually 33 pretty much thirds of Free, and Fry over my entire life. So just getting used to it. But yeah, today, obviously, the legal tampering period for NFL free agency gets started at 11 a.m. Central Time, which we're assuming that a lot of news is going to happen and happen really fast over the next few hours here. We've already gotten some pretty wild news of Russell Wilson apparently headed to Pittsburgh, all sorts of stuff going on. But today, Kyle actually last week dropped a free agency big board for the Minnesota Vikings, going over 25 different names that the Vikings could be in pursuit of this offseason. I encourage anybody that hasn't already read it to go check it out because it's very well written, as all of Kyle's work usually is. So we're going to go over a few names for each of for just the free agency purposes. I'll get things started. Just with a guy that I would be remiss not to talk about because I've written about him so much over the past few months, and that is running back Derrick Henry. Remind people where did he fall on your big board again?
Man, I think he was 13th. Yeah, I got to confirm here now because I'm betting it's 12th. Excuse me, 12th on the big board. So
12th. Okay.
Kind of smack dab in the middle.
Yeah, and I think honestly, he's a guy that I think would help the Vikings a lot just in terms of their running game. They were 28th in terms of red zone touchdown percentage last year, and a lot of that had to do with just inefficient running from both Alexander Mattison and Ty Chandler throughout the year. Alexander Mattison actually averaged less than a yard per carry in the red zone last year, which I think is a big reason why the Vikings opted to release him a couple weeks ago. But for Henry, I mean, obviously he's going to be a 30-year-old running back. The wheels, there are definitely signs of the wheels starting to come off in terms of his ability to be a true workhorse back at the NFL level. But with him being 6'3", 6'4", 250 pounds he's still a guy down in that red area that nobody's going to want to tackle, and nobody's really been able to tackle still. He ranked 6th in the NFL with 9 rushing touchdowns in the red zone last year. He was 4th according to PFF in terms of missed tackles with 57. So he's still a guy that you get him in a 3rd, 4th and short situation down near the red area, down near the goal line. He's a guy that can pick up those big yards when you absolutely need it. And I think with the Vikings struggling in terms of their rushing attack throughout the past couple of years, and not really having a surefire option right now at the running back position, I think Henry would be a decent add. Obviously, it's going to really come down to what kind of money he can actually get. I know the running back market hasn't been great in the past couple of years, but with all these names out there this season, it feels like that might change a little bit over the next few weeks. What do you think about adding Henry to the lineup this offseason?
Yeah, so you were on this early. I think I saw you talk about it. You're the first one to actually kind of bring it to my attention. When I think of free agent fits, so one, you think about what the Vikings want to do, and 2, you think about the talent that's already present and think, okay, does this player complement who is already on the roster and who is already part of the plan? So Ty Chandler, obviously being the name, kind of smaller. He's a burner, super, super fast. Henry, more power. You kind of think, the Thunder and the Lightning. Henry bringing the Thunder could be really good, right? And then once Hawkinson is back 100%, man, that just would be so difficult to defend. And so obviously you understand that if you sign Henry, it's not about, solving your running back issue in 2029. It's about solving it for 24, maybe 25. But keep in mind, again, like apply your Vikings filter, right? The Vikings want to compete in 2024. You can debate whether they're going to, but they do want to, right? And so this is one way of kind of complementing the talent that's already in-house, balancing that offense, which they've been trying to do now for 2 years and have failed to do so. I actually think it's a sneaky good ad. You know what I mean? And it could be a little bit cheaper than, say, a Saquon Barkley or a Josh Jacobs even. I actually like this addition, right? And I mean, it's not to say they're going to do it necessarily, but it wouldn't shock me if they did. I think it would actually complement the offense quite well. I like the Derrick Henry potential. So I kind of got my eye on him. In terms of one coming back your
and
way.
then I'll throw it back over to you.
Yeah. Sorry, in terms, sorry, you kind of froze up there. In terms of one coming back your way, can I do a Titans teammate? Danico Autry?
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
3-4 defensive ends.
Yeah, I
Right.
love
So
that.
we're not talking about Daniil Hunter, defensive end. He's an outside linebacker of 3-4. Danico Autry, kind of like a 5 technique. So think kind of like the role that Dean Lowry played. Right. And so where, Lowry is a little bit disappointing. Autry last year, I think, was up at 11.5 sacks. And so I know that he's 33. And again, I know this is not about solving your pass rush issue in 2027, 2028, 2029. This is about kind of supercharging things for 2024, maybe 2025, and kind of taking it from there, right? And so getting a little bit of that interior pass rush coming over from Tennessee. I think he could be a sneaky ad, and is one of the ones. It's the position of need. It's a high level ability, giving Flores more weapons. This is something that Kevin O'Connell kind of prophesied about, like basically 2 months ago, right? And kind of now we're at the point where we can actually kind of put some of this thing into place. And so I'm going to put Autry in there as my sneaky ad. He's on the board as well. He might have gotten top 10. Where was he? 9th. Danico Autry, 33-year-old, 5 technique. I got him at 9th. So I don't know. I will be, in some sense, surprised in that he's older. But then again, you think position of need, potential cost, and then still quite a strong player. So keep an eye on Autry.
Yeah, and I think even if the Vikings bring back Lowry and keep him around, they definitely need help at that defensive line spot. They've only got 3 guys at that position right now with Lowry, Harrison Phillips, Jaquan Roy, and Roy barely got onto the field last year to begin with. And right now he's slotted to be a starter. So unless he takes a huge leap over the next few months and is able to jump into that starting lineup, they definitely need some sort of presence. And getting a pass rusher like Autry, that's going to, especially if they lose Daniil Hunter this offseason, that's going to be something that they absolutely need to take some pressure off of their edge rushers. So I really like that fit in Minnesota.
Okay, so keep this in mind.
The next guy that I
Sorry. Keep this in mind before we go to the next one. So 43 sacks last year for the Vikings. Right now, 30.5 are headed towards free agency. When you add it all up for Hunter, for Wanham, for Davenport, it's just there's a lot, right? Jonathan Bullard, Hicks, Dye. You add it all up, 30.5 sacks out of the team's 43. Some of those players will probably come back. Hopefully Hunter, right? But it's just something to, you could already say the pass rush wasn't good enough. It needs to improve. And then you look at what could potentially leave, and you think, okay, there needs to be some urgency here to kind of overhaul the front 7.
And 3 of those sacks that are remaining came in one game off of Harrison Smith. So
right. Yes. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So next guy that I want to talk about, I'm going to stick on the defensive side, but I'm going to go towards the secondary. I really think that Darius Williams, cornerback, who was just released by Jacksonville last week, is an interesting fit for the Vikings. I understand he's an older guy, but he also had a little bit of a late start to his NFL career too. So I don't necessarily think that the wheels are necessarily a concern at this point, just because he had such a late start to his NFL career, coming undrafted out of Birmingham, Alabama, I believe. And then he hopped on with the Rams and won a Super Bowl with Kevin O'Connell in LA. Right. So there's already some sort of connection there. I know obviously O'Connell was the offensive coordinator there, so he didn't exactly have a ton of time being directly coached by O'Connell, but there's a little bit of a connection. And Williams, he put together some really great coverage numbers for Jacksonville last year. I think he was 4th in terms of PFF grade among cornerbacks, and 2nd in coverage. So he's definitely got the skills to be a lockdown corner on the boundary. And obviously he's a little bit more of a zone guy than a true man-to-man type of press coverage type of player, but I mean, the Vikings, I say what you want about Brian Flores and his scheme, and he wants to be aggressive and everything, but the Vikings ran the least man coverage of any team in the NFL last year. So I think if it comes down to it, they could find success by doing that again. And a guy like Williams, I think, would be a really solid addition to that. He's got great ball skills. He intercepted 4 passes last year, which was a career high for him, and 19 passes defended. So he's a guy that I'm keeping an eye on for sure.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, in Flores, every coach says this. Not every coach does it, but Flores actually seems to follow through on, it's about the players, not the plays. Like, he actually will adjust his schemes, his play call, his personnel deployment. Like, he'll kind of adjust his strategy based off the talent that's available to him. Every coach says they will. But Flores actually seems, he genuinely does it. Actions speak louder than words. Kind of saw that last year. And so if there's something that Darius Williams does
For
well,
sure.
and he comes in, then I would just anticipate that the DC is going to try to let him do what he does well, right? And it sounds simple, but man, often it's not for a lot of coordinators, a lot of play callers. So yeah, fair enough. Darius Williams. Final one for me, Josh, would be Patrick Queen, the Baltimore linebacker, who we'll see if he's still a Baltimore linebacker by the end. But he's young, first-round pick. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah just talked about with Justin Jefferson how he likes blue players, making a comparison to stocks. Of course, he's an investor by trade, right? And so Patrick Queen, so Adofo-Mensah, just again trying to put on kind of like the Vikings lens, he likes bringing in young, high upside players, highly drafted. Queen would qualify, right? And so kind of like Patrick Queen, maybe Devin White, he's another first-round pick, super athletic, young linebacker. Again, this idea of the front seven needs that overhaul, needs talent. I get my eye on Queen. I mean, obviously there's some risk in maybe committing too much money to a linebacker, but we'll see. The defense needs some major work kind of thing. And with that, cap space is there. And then depending on how you massage the deal, provided it goes 3, 4, 5 years, you could kind of have some pretty manageable cap hits initially. And Kwesi's been fairly kind of creative with that. He's gotten in with void years quite a bit. Patrick Queen, again, just don't be surprised. There's going to be a lot of competition for him. He was a second-team All-Pro last year. Don't be surprised if the Vikings are among the teams interested in him.
100%. And I mean, it's always a balancing act with, I mean, especially the Vikings over the past couple of years of trying to compete, but also trying to get younger at a lot of positions. And Jordan Hicks, as good as he was last year, he's above the age of 30, and who knows exactly how many years of great football he has. And obviously his first year in Minnesota didn't go great. And then Brian Flores kind of rejuvenated him by utilizing him more as a blitzer. I think Patrick Queen fills that role really well as well. And he's 8 years younger than Jordan Hicks. So you have a guy that you can plug in for the long term alongside Ivan Pace and just really solidify that position for the long term. So I really like that fit.
Beautiful. And I mean the age, the attacking
last
style,
thing we're going to talk about
makes sense.
Yeah. And then one more thing before we hop out of here and let everybody get into their free agency news and everything. It's going to be a busy day across the league. Obviously, the Kirk Cousins thing with it's not exactly unexpected that he's set to test the market. Apparently, the Vikings and him met yesterday to try and work out a deal. Obviously, no news came out of that, and he's set to hit the market. Seems like there's going to be a ton of suitors out there for him. Atlanta being one of them. New England, after they traded Mac Jones, feels like maybe a possibility if they don't target a quarterback in the draft. And I think that's personally where I would go with New England at this point. But I guess the last thing that we're going to just one more thing is just final predictions on Kirk Cousins. Does he stay in Minnesota? Does he go to Atlanta? Does he go elsewhere? What do you think, Kyle?
I've been fairly consistent on Minnesota throughout the whole thing. I still think it's going to be Minnesota. I think the adjustments, I said way back when, I said 2 years, $35 million a year. I'll just bump that up. I'll say 2 years, $40 million a year. Sticking around in Minnesota, that'd be my best guess.
Yeah, I kind of have been on the same page as you as this. I'm just not entirely convinced that he's going to find a team that's willing to pay him $50 million a year, fully guaranteed contract, that sort of thing. Coming off that Achilles being 36, I mean, I know he was playing really good football last year, but at the end of the day, you gotta there's going to be a lot of risk throwing that type of money at Cousins at this point in his career. And yeah, I think he's going to end up testing the market and then probably in the next couple of days coming back to Minnesota and being like, yeah, you guys were offering me a fair deal compared to what everybody else is doing. So I'm kind of on the same page. I think he does stick in Minnesota. Um, I don't necessarily think that that should impact what they do in terms
Mhm.
of drafting a quarterback. I still think that trying to get up into that top 3, top 5,
Yeah,
somewhere in
yeah,
there just to take a stab at somebody, I think is still the best move. But Cousins
yeah,
offers stability. He's had some of his greatest success in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, and I think that's the best option right now.
yeah. And I basically echoing what you're saying, do both. Bring Cousins back, rebuild by
Yeah,
drafting a youngster. Um, I got my eye on 5 with the Chargers and 7. You pointed out pick number 7 not too long ago. The Titans, Rand Carthon's their GM. He and Kwesi are pals. I've got my eye on 5 and 7, with the obvious idea being that you jump ahead of Atlanta at 8, right? And so um, I think Cousins comes back, and I think they still. I mean, there's no guarantee they pick a passer in the first round, but I think they're going to think long and hard about it. And if they do, I just wouldn't be shocked if there's a trade from 11 to 7 or 11 to 5.
yeah, and we should know something within the next, I don't know, 48 hours, 52 hours, something like that, in terms of Cousins and what he's planning on doing. So it won't be too much longer here. It's been a couple long months of just trying to predict everything and just a lot of speculation out there. But yeah, we're finally here. Free agency is about to get started. It's an exciting time in the NFL calendar. But for today's
Mhm.
Purple Huddle, I think that's gonna just about do it. Thank you, Kyle, for joining, and everybody subscribe to the channel. Go check out VikingsTerritory.com, PurplePTSD.com. We'll have all sorts of free agency coverage over the next few weeks and months. Just breaking down all the news, what's gonna happen. And yeah, have a great day, everyone.